Hello, my name's Alexei Novitsky, and today I'll be playing walking you guys through the book Infinity, which is a 9-book anthology that goes step by step from modern accepted physics to understanding a fifth dimensional toroid of creation. At the same time, translating some of those concepts into piano, poetry, and philosophy to give a bigger picture, you could say, or to show different learning styles of learning. Not everybody is scientifically based. Some people learn through poetry, some learn through art, some learn through music. And so by combining them all into a single show, you can maybe take something away from tonight, right? But one of the concepts that you could say is one of the most crucial to understand is that we ourselves, the human body, all of our physicality, exists within superposition. And what does that mean? Well, just like the water waves of an ocean, where the waves overlap and create peaks or nodes like standing waves, the same is happening within our physical universe. Matter itself is blipping in and out of solidity, scales related to the Planck second, somewhat like the peaks of waves on the surface of an ocean. And so I want to start by reading a section called A Slip in Time. And what a slip is, well, that's a geological term where you have a slip within a crystalline structure. And that's when an atom itself moves from one location into another. And so every time matter moves through space-time itself, that's somewhat like a slip within the solid crystallized state of the now moment. And so this would be a slip in time. And it's the end of the liquid light state universe. And just real quick, the light state itself is the incoming and outgoing electromagnetic system for every Planck voxel that exists within the universe. So in the second book, we introduced the light state, and we also introduced the mind-body-spirit diagram to show how your body is resonating with the collapsing of the now moment at all the different dimensional layers, right? So like the first wave to interact with this fluid is the longest wave of a human body, which is the delta wave. Then comes the theta, brain harmony, the alpha, the beta, slow gamma, fast gamma, ultimately also your physical body. So, but it starts from the longest waves of creation. And so that was a little tangent. So the light state is simply the incoming and outgoing electromagnetism for every single Planck voxel that exists. A slip in time. And just one more quick thing before I read it. Our perception of the universe comes from a point of attention, which you could say is the greatest inertial reference frame of infinity. A lot of times people think of their inertial reference frame as like on the Earth. And so you kind of judge everything from on the Earth. Well, if you were existing in the sun's inertial reference frame, the Earth is spinning really fast and orbiting the sun, right? We don't say that the sun orbits the Earth anymore. We say the Earth spins while orbiting the sun. So now let's go into that reference frame of a toroidal form of infinity. And so our perception within this is a point of attention, and we are orbiting, in essence, the synchronized energies, meaning the vortex toroidal form that is orbiting this greatest center, it's actually orbiting a greater center. But we don't know that just yet in the series, right? We go step by step from modern accepted physics. So a slip in time. From our perspective in the light state, we may see a new picture. There was once a moment when the Earth was flat, the sun went around the Earth, and that's what was. Then an awakening of sorts. We saw the moons of Jupiter and realized we may be the ones circling the sun. Our perception was backwards. We looked at the stars with our own eyes and we thought we saw all. Then a solar transit. Other solar systems became reality. The Hubble telescope then led to new foundations as millions upon billions of galaxies emerged into existence. We saw a smooth cosmic microwave background. We saw evidence of a Big Bang. We are one grain of sand, one galaxy in the vast ocean of space. Now we see evidence of conscious preparations as space constantly crunches fluid waves into solid existence. What could that mean? In a fashion of sorts, are we not back on Earth again, saying the sun travels around us? Is this still just not another perspective in which there is a bigger picture? Does the Earth not orbit the sun? We see space preparing in our direction. However, it is all in motion. The Earth around the sun around the galaxy around the Big Bang, and the Big Bang around what? Is the Big Bang not traveling and accelerating through a medium? Is there not another underlying motion that would cause the appearance of light crunching? There is another way to have the effect of space and conscious preparations, and that would be if we are on a constant state of light speed acceleration through the crystal of time. Somewhat meaning that our entire dimensional layer exists on a relative, you could say in quotes, surface or information matrix around a greater center. And so from the human body's perspective of 4D space-time, you might say that, well, we're on the surface of a black hole, because that's understanding and speaking on creation through that 4D perspective, meaning our X, Y, Z, and our perception of time moving forward. But the perception of time moving forward is that point of attention moving through that greatest structure. And as that point of attention moves through that greatest structure, we see that we have an overlapping. The now moment from that point of attention is created by an overlapping of 1/2 past and 1/2 future. But since you're in a state of rotation, you also have inner energies and outer energies. It's like being stuck against the wall of a gravitron, right? You've got the future direction is the direction you're spinning towards, but you also have inner pole, you could say, and you also have like an outer shooting away from you. So think relativity, think Einstein's theory of relativity and the relationship of perceiving or interacting with energies. All the energies you interact with are relative to the inertial reference frame. That translates into different orbits, essentially creating different energetic densities, and that's perceived by every single Planck voxel. So the relative dimension of our experience is quite simply relative to the energies that create our physical dimension. What am I really saying here? So we can't see past the smooth cosmic microwave background because it's a flow of space-time equal to the speed of light outward. We can't see into black holes past the event horizon because it's a flow of space-time inward equal to the speed of light. We're somewhat perceiving a very specific dimensional layer within a greater structure. But that effect of the perceiving of space-time exists at every single Planck voxel, because every single Planck voxel can be perceived by every single relative frame of motion that exists. And so in that sense, your light encompasses the entire universe in at least one or more relative reference frames, from 0 to infinity. And we start to collapse our physical dimension. We have influence on our physical dimension at the longest orbitals, you could say from every Planck voxel, or biggest distances or slowest frequencies at every dimensional layer. And so I'm going to read one poem real quick. It's called Space Preparation. And then I'm going to play a song called The Big Bang Multiverse. And I like space preparation because when you understand the layering, the stacking, you could say, of dimensions that create the perception, you can then start to create technologies, right? And I would consider those 5-dimensional technologies because they work through dimensions, meaning past and future, but also denser dimensions and less dense dimensions. It's like somewhat the shells of experience that are all overlapping, just like a radio channel, right? You could say the longest wave is channel 5. I'm just throwing out a random number. Oh, we'll start with 2.5. The longest channel is 2.5 hertz. The shortest channel on the human radio is 80 hertz. And so relate that to brain harmony. Well, delta is a different channel than beta. It's a different channel than fast gamma. And so there's the different layers that we can start to interact with this fluid. And so when you understand the stacking of the layers and how they're all drifting inwards around a toroidal form, creating every point of attention, you can somewhat use the opposite effects to create technologies that work through all of time and not just our dimensional layer. And so this one is called Space Prep, page 293. What's kind of cool is the very first book was on display at the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum in 2015. And the book of poetry was like the end part of it. The first book was Your Influence in Space, 20 poems and 4 philosophical discussions. And so this poem was in the first book, and it was on display in 2015 at Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum, right next to the return module and the moon rock, and Qualcomm was also presenting next to me. So space preparation. Everything is everywhere, and everything is known. Light moves at the speed of light, no matter how fast you've grown. Light going with you is solid like stone. Light coming off you has free rein to roam. We already exist at the edge of space. We people are proud. We are the human race. A trick played by light has blinded our best. Einstein fell too to this electromagnetic slew. Matter can travel fast, much faster than light, but it will not look like it because light is what fills our night. The sources of magnetism are information exchange. Nothing will ever look like it's faster than light. It's the universe's greatest trick that makes us sit like a brick, and our eyes do deceive us, and here's my wick. Space is prepared before matter shines, and proof lies within differential lines. To the man that is going near simply light speed, our light has been stretched maybe 2 times indeed. It has traveled far, a superior distance, and so how does that compare to this stellar instance? For the man traveling at infinite speed, our wave is extended to infinity indeed. So as you see, our light exists. It is everywhere at once, but not always dense. We have effect at the edge of space, but our energy is strongest where we stand in place. Space gets prepared from long waves to short. As you move forward through time, you've already made rhyme. And so what can we do with this secret of knowledge? What can we make? What can we create? A machine so big it takes up our system, with parts moving at speeds that would make On glisten. This detector could see a transformation of waves. This detector could see the future, indeed. It is all there in some light of a kind. Remember, space is first prepared by each and every mind. You have the capacity and ability to perceive that your light exists everywhere, at all moments, indeed. So again, just speaking on how your body's light encompasses the entire universe in at least 1 or more inertial reference frames, and that nothing will ever look like it's going faster than light to a human body, because transverse electromagnetism is our most advanced sense when it comes to sensory evolution. And the ability to see light comes from the second toroidal form of the energies that are kind of creating us locally. We get sound, touch, taste, and smell from the toroid energy that is the earth. We get the sense of vision from the toroid energy that is the sun, and that creates our 5 senses. But what, just real quick, so if we never even had eyes and sound was our most advanced source of information exchange, we would think that the edge of the Earth's atmosphere is the smooth infrasound background. We would think that deep into the Earth would be something called the sound hole. That would be our science. And science, the ability to do science, comes from the state of evolution of the body performing the science. So if humanity never had eyes, we would think the speed of sound is a limitation. Humanity has eyes, we think that the speed of light is a limitation. But what is maybe the greatest sense that might be somewhat undermined, because it's not necessarily a physical sense until it manifests into the now moment? And you could say maybe that's a sense of love or a sense of synchronicity towards a future moment. And so what does that really mean, right? To have this, you could say, 5th dimensional sense of the potentialities of your life. It speaks about the toroidal form of infinity, is where that sense would come from. Sound, touch, taste, and smell come from the toroid of energy that is the earth. The sense of vision from the toroid of energy that is the sun. The sense of synchronicity would come from the toroidal form of energy that is infinity. It's your ability to create a node of matter and to have it interact and to move through and to be a slip in time. That's where that comes from, is the fifth dimensional toroidal form of infinity. And in that form, from that bird's eye view, looking down into it, you are quite literally a spiral of energy that is harmonized and synchronized to the point where everything is blipping at the perfect rate to have a manifestation. And that is your body manifesting as a point of attention, but from a spiraled state of energy, right? But from that perspective, the one half past, one half future, inner and outer dimensions, crunching and stretching perception into existence, and in the past doing the opposite effect. In the future, energy between you and the center time is being crunched to you as matter. Energy on the outside is being stretched off of you as light. That is why matter is being crunched in from the denser realms to our perception, our light being shot outward. In the past, the reverse effect is happening. Matter is being crunched back to us and light is being shot inward. It's the Doppler shift. But when it comes to the magnifying lens, that is the point of attention, perceiving the raw space-time. And so that is crunching and stretching our bodies into existence. And so in essence, you are a spiral of energy that exists through that fifth dimensional form. And the reason that why I'm saying all this is because this next song is called The Big Bang Multiverse. And I have it animated on the YouTube channel. Just look up The Big Bang Multiverse and it will show a spiral of energy drifting inwards and hitting a very specific harmonic distance away from the center point. And at that moment, you could say the standing wave of a delta harmonic is awakened. And as the energy continues to spiral around, it hits it again, just like every time it makes that perfect circle. There we go. Sorry about that. So we got this energy spiraling inward. That's the funny thing about piano. If you were to ask me the first note of a song, I don't know it. But if you want me to play the whole song, I'll play it for you. So as this energy is spiraling inwards, it hits that very specific distance away from the center of time. And you could say that the delta wave is awakened. And now that energy continues to spiral around, drifting inward at the same time and becoming tidally locked and synchronized with denser and denser energies. And even if you wanted to look at historical concepts such as like evolution of species on the planet Earth, the first brain harmonies that came into mind were the reptilian ones. Before we got the monkey brain, right? The cognitive brain. You've got delta theta harmony, then you get alpha harmony, then you get beta harmony, and then you get slow and fast gamma harmony. And so as energy synchronizes, you could say a conscious experience is formed. And so right now we just have the delta wave. But after delta, energy drifts inwards, theta is awakened. Now the energy continues to spiral inward. But those two states are tidally locked. And you could say that the less dense vibrations are controlling the pacing motions of the denser vibrations. As energy ultimately spirals into the densest forms of creation, creating the now moment. But it's all it's one fluid experience. And that fluid experience consists of the outer dimensions as well as the inner dimensions that exist beyond human perception. One fluid motion, one crystalline structure of time. Now the energy continues to drift inwards, and you can say that alpha and beta get awakened. case, if we find our centers, and through our paces, we find our centers. And we process. And what I mean by process is that all energy that gets tidally locked and synchronized processes, meaning every single state of tidally locked energies have an in and out motion within the creation of themselves. The hydrogen has its own in and out motion through reality. The heartbeat of a human has it, right? The breath of a human has an in and out motion. But so does, and one of my opinion, right, is that the circadian rhythms in and out motion might be one of the most fascinating to me. Just because that same in and out motion also translates into our entire dimensional layer. So like not only does our circadian rhythm go through this in and out motion, meaning delta wave at midnight, theta as we wake up, alpha, let me open the book. So you have the delta waves that are the biggest rings. You've got theta, alpha, beta. As you go through the circadian rhythm, you go from delta at midnight, theta maybe around 2:30 in the morning to 4 in the morning. Hence, the witching hour is the theta state of humanity. 4 o'clock, and then you get into your alpha state. Then you get into your beta state, which is the denser one. Like we're typically experiencing the physical dimension in a beta state. That's your awake, cognitively processing, you're rocking and rolling. When you're more relaxed, your brain harmony drops down into an alpha state. When you get into a meditative state, you go into a theta or a dream state. When you're in your deep sleep, you're in delta. So you've got delta, theta, alpha, beta. But you also have slow gamma, which is basically 30. So delta, 2.5 hertz, theta 5, alpha 10, beta 20, slow gamma 40. Now you've got like spidey senses, heightened awareness, and you can maybe see a little bit through the veil. But when you hit fast gamma, that's 80 hertz. Literally, it's the same as having a near-death experience or a DMT trip. Your mind is now on, instead of being tuned to channel 20 on the radio, which is your beta state, you're tuned to channel 80 on the radio. And they all exist within superposition. For example, this could be your beta state, just making that one tone. But now if you were to move 2 octaves inward, you've got the, I don't even remember. right? So instead of hearing this with your beta state, you'd be hearing this with your fast gamma state. So it's quite literally like picking up on a different vibration within the superposition of relative vibrations that's creating our physical world. And so that's fine and dandy. That's all really cool. What I want to do is start speaking about the second song that I like to play, and it's called "Hold My Hand." And I touched on it earlier, the idea of the mind-body-spirit diagram, the idea of the surface of the ocean, and now you're on the surface of the ocean, many surfaces, because you're a multi-dimensional being. You're created from all different dimensional energies, but let's just think conscious harmonics right now. So your delta wave is at 2.5 hertz. It's the biggest ring of creation. And as this energy is spiraling inward, it hits the delta state. So your delta vibrations create distortions. Now the energy continues to spiral inward. It hits your theta shell, distortions, meaning the subconscious mind of humanity has already started to collapse the waveforms of the conscious mind, meaning the paths of free will and choice that ultimately crystallize. So that all starts from the collective subconscious. Energy drifting inwards. Delta wave is the first one to hit it, bang. Theta wave the second, bang. Alpha the third, beta the fourth, slow gamma, fast gamma, but ultimately controlling that crystallization of the now moment. And so every thought you have is like throwing a stone into this smooth shell. Consider it to be like a pond, and it's just perfectly clear. Now you hold a subconscious posture. You've thrown the shape of that subconscious stone into this pond. Now the energy of the now moment continues to drift inward to the theta state. Well, you've got another subconscious thought. You've thrown more pebbles into it. You've created more distortions. Now you have the alpha state. You're relaxed. You're not really processing and doing too many things. Again, your conscious mind. So subconscious mind were the first two. Now you have your conscious mind. It is interacting with that fluid as well. Then comes the beta mind, the awake conscious mind. But the paths of free will and the paths of least resistance have already started to be collapsed from the collective subconscious. Now continue to expand the energy outward, another layer. There's another layer, right? And so there's almost the minds of all the different dimensional layers that affect the energy before our subconscious even starts to interact with it. That energy continues to spiral inward into the denser harmonics of creation. So you've got this giant spiral of energy that not only that starts from infinitely large and spirals inward to infinitely dense through a toroidal form. We're talking about a toroidal form of infinity. And so the thought forms of the less dense realms create the distortions for the denser realms. And as all the energy is spiraling inward, it needs to harmonize and synchronize as one fluid structure. And so you could say there's regions within the thought form mesh of creation that are very laminar. The energy is very synchronized. People aren't really utilizing their free will too much, or maybe they are, but all synchronized in one fashion. So you get something called a laminar flow of fluid. But if everybody's caught up in their own spirals of delusion and they've got their own wants, don't wants, assumptions, and expectations, they're creating all these ripples that aren't necessarily interacting with each other. Well, they are. I mean, they're interacting with each other to the point where they're creating a lot of friction. A lot of different size vortices, a lot of different conscious projections that are not necessarily harmonized with the greatest laminar flow through that fluid, but more focused on a human delusion. Because materialism, that point of attention within that fifth dimensional structure, is all they know, right? So if all you know is the point of attention that is the physical creation, then all you have is the delusions that have been shown to you since the moment you were born, which have been propagated by media, culture, all that kind of stuff, which creates somewhat clusters of conscious creation or clusters of coherent thought forms that are all existing within this toroidal form. The point that I'm getting at, though, is we introduce the mind, body, and spirit diagram. And what ultimately that shows is that every shift in one will create a pacing in the other. It also shows how you have a pacing about your perfect center. Let's just say you're at perfect zero, right? And then a thought comes in. It's going to create somewhat of a toroidal form outward that then has to pace back to the center point. And you can map that. You can map that And the pacing back to that center somewhat resembles the Fibonacci spiral, circling inward around the perfect center to get back to that point. So what's so good about that center point or the golden spot? Well, that's where you're able to actually like harmonize your energetic state through all those different dimensional layers. That's why some people are more lucid in their dreams. It's the simplest way to put it. So you get lucidity, you could say spiritual existence, astral planes, then you get like a reincarnated past version of the self, right? Laminarize your energy through all the different dimensions of time, and you create what I like to call a golden chain, which is all the reincarnations of the self, which are existing simultaneously, but all existing perfectly at center and timing their motions to be at center when the other one is. So it's somewhat being aware of the pacing motions of like past and future lives and match timing your energy with that. It's kind of what's going on. But so that's a different story. What I'm really trying to focus on, though, is that by understanding the pacing motions of your life, the thought forms you hold, you can basically help heal someone that is stuck in a spiral of delusion. For example, in the 6th book, The Physics of Love, Synchronicity, we go into spirals of creation and something called the line of sight. And the line of sight is how far into time you can consciously see. Can you see to past incarnations, or do you literally just see to your next 30-minute drug fix, right? Like how big is your spiral relative to that toroidal form of infinity? If you're stuck in a really, really tight spiral, like a drug addict, you've got a 30-minute spiral within time. And it's based off of, you could say, a delusion, a thought form, something of that nature that pulls you from your perfect center. The greatest you that exists without delusion would be, in quotes, a person in general with a drug addiction on their mind. It's pulling them away from the true them that is existing, right? So they get pulled away. Now they're existing in a different pattern. Like literally, they're manipulating the space-time in a different way that creates the now moment or overlaps with all the projections of mind to create that now moment. And it's giving them a 30-minute spiral in time. So you see someone caught in a spiral of delusion, and by understanding the pacing motions of your life and how, just like when you throw a pebble next to another pebble, because if you're a pebble in the pond and you're making your ripples, let's just say you've got like a 5-year line of sight. You throw your stone in, it makes a nice big 5-year ripple. Now let's say you have a 30-minute line of sight, you throw in a lot of ripples, right? Just like all the time. But by understanding the pace, and so when you think about wave addition, wave subtraction, you can see how different thought forms and different energetic projections can cancel or amplify one another. So by understanding the pacing motions of your life, it helps you understand the pacing motions of others' lives, and you can essentially help heal, maybe not necessarily heal, but connect them to the laminar flow just by being in the presence, right? It's the ripples you're sending outward in relationship to the ripples that they're sending outward. So when you understand the postures you hold, the ripples you send outward, you can instill healing, right? And that healing ultimately comes down from the laminarization of that, you could say, vortex energy to that perfect center, from the higher and lower meaning less dense to more dense realms. I mean, and that's ultimately why that toroidal energy, that laminar flow, that 5th dimensional laminar flow has such healing effects. And that's why people, can sell med beds that basically focus on sending in that perfect golden ratio energy into the body. Is because it's laminarizing the energy. But a person themselves can also act as a person, as an emitter, laminarizing energy. So by understanding your postures, you can help walk people to the greatest laminar flow of their creation. Told you, I can't ever remember the first note, but once I get it, there it is. If only you would, please just hold my hand. If only you would, please just understand. Yeah, so I've been had that made me real sad. So if you come here, I might shed my only you could let me hold your hand. If only you could let me understand. Yeah, so you've been had and made you real sad. So come over here and you can shed your feet. So come along, let's sing a new song. Let's live and cheer and enjoy our year. You came and we held hands. Yeah, you understand. It's we were sad, but now we are glad because you came here and filled me with joy. And so one thing I think is kind of funny is that people, they say this work doesn't relate to the UAP topic, or not necessarily that. I've heard that before, right? They read through the work and they're like, how does this relate to UAP? It's like, well, the whole book is talking about a fifth dimension of creation. It's talking about the delta and theta states of brain harmony interacting with a different information matrix or dimensional layer of creation. It's talking about slow and fast gamma interacting with different layers of creation. It's talking about how to create technologies that move faster than light. They can move into the future, they can move into the past, they can move into denser realms or less dense realms. But the one thing that I find the most fascinating about it is that there exist time dilations between different dimensional layers. And that might be the most fascinating aspect of this whole concept. And what does that really mean? Well, time dilation is a result of perceiving energy based off of that inertial reference frame, right? So like if you're on Earth, you're going to perceive the flow of space-time in a certain way. But now let's say you're inside of a black hole and you're looking back at the Earth. You're going to perceive a different flow of space-time. I believe the denser realms, meaning experience more time than less dense. At least the way that this works is that Time itself is a relationship to spin and to frequency. Spin and frequency are directly related to how close you are to that center. So things that are, and that center is being perceived by every single Planck voxel of our creation, right? So things that are denser have a tighter spin about them that create them. Things that are less dense have a slower spin about them. What am I getting at? I'm losing my train of thought here. The time dilations between dimensions. So now consider your delta wave, a human in a delta state. How many times does their brain take a picture of reality per second? Well, they have, let's just say, a conscious modality of 2.5 hertz. In your awake state, you're basically taking pictures of reality 60 times in a second, but your brain harmony is at 20 hertz. Under extreme stress, heightened awareness, your brain is taking 500 pictures of reality in a second. Literally, you're perceiving time based off of the conscious snapshot rate in relationship to that superposition of relative vibrations. So under extreme stress, heightened perception, adrenaline rush, your brain takes 500 pictures per second. That's almost 10 times as many pictures as existing within a beta state, where you're doing like 60. 500 compared to 60, right? It's like 9 times. Closer to 10. I don't know, 9.5. Who cares? Point being is that there's time dilations that exist between dimensions. And now we're talking about the infinitely large in relationship to our scale, to the infinitely small, but within a fifth dimensional toroid, meaning that spiraling form that is you. So within that perception, you see that the outer dimensions, they experience time way slower than we do. There are more Planck seconds in 1 second of time than there are seconds in the known universe. Meaning, the act of me waving my arm takes an eternity to unfold to a Planck-sized being. A being existing within those densest realms of creation is experiencing much, much more time than a being that is existing in an outer realm. The most outer realms experience the least amount of time. And so there's time dilations between dimensions to the point where your thought forms and your postures create habitats for those denser realms of creation. And by understanding the postures you make, the pacing motions of your life, you can create perfect spirals of energy, either through focused intent and thought form. And that's where the whole idea of tulpa comes into play. Jinn, beings of denser creations coming out into our dimensional layer. The postures, the pacing motions you literally hold are the habitats for those beings to evolve within. The skinwalker, the hitchhiker effect, rather, relates to the fact that like once you have a pacing motion within your life, you are connected to every single cluster, every single crystal that exists within your cluster of conscious creation, meaning like your family, a dog, a cat, any being that is in relationship, has a relationship to you, will also start pacing, because a push, for every push, there's a pull. If you're pacing, everyone connected to you will also start pacing. Whether or not physically, it's going to be in mind or spirit. A pacing in one will cause a pacing in another. The energies are always synchronized. That creates bigger habitats. When it comes to perceiving a denser realm, all you need then is somewhat of a vortex energy going from a point and getting bigger, and it will harmonize the 2 different dimensional layers. Now you can actually physically see something. And that's why the magnetic hotspots of the Earth have so much effect on this whole thing as well. So people themselves are somewhat walking around with habitats. It's so crazy. So we're a point of attention flying through a toroidal form of infinity. We've got future, past, inner, outer being stretched and crunched into existence, right? So we're perceiving a very specific dimensional layer. Inner energies experience more time, and so the postures we hold act as habitats for those denser vibrations. Now, when we go to the magnetic focal points of the Earth, what that does is bring those habitats. Magnetic vortex that's going from a point and getting bigger will bring stuff that's in denser realms into our dimensional layer. A magnetic vortex that's going from a big size into a point will bring stuff from outer realms into ours. Outer realms are much more harmonious than our dimensional layer, which is much more harmonious than the fractalized versions of all of our delusions overlapping, trying to synchronize as one fluid now moment, right? So if you wanted to say like angelic and stuff, you could say outer realms are more angelic. You could say inner realms are more like malevolent, benevolent, malevolent, right? And that's because the inner realms are typically distortions of a human body. Point being, though, you've got the vortexes that come in to a point, benevolent being coming to a point. You've got vortices coming from point getting bigger. Well, that's a denser vibration getting bigger. So now you have, where's the scientific data? Well, you've got people like Dr. Jim Segala that has his MooPass device that basically shows a redshift whenever these things come about, or most of them, meaning a point of attention expanding creates a redshift. Then you also have Steve Mira with the time dilation detectors measuring loss of time in the experience of, or in the position of the phenomenon, meaning he's got two atomic clocks tied together with a cord, an electrical wire, and then he's got this device that measures the difference in time. And basically, the device that's inside of the point of attention that the phenomenon took place experiences less time than the one that's outside of it. Again, showing an expansion of space-time. So where are these things coming from? Well, if they're interdimensional, they're coming from both the denser realms and the less dense realms within that fifth dimensional toroidal form. Less dense being more benevolent, more dense being more malevolent, just based off of the nature of creation, ultimately. Like the more in line you become, that relates to the spirals of your line of sight, right? So if you're stuck in a tight spiral of personal delusion, you're in a very, very tight thought form, a conscious thought form that's existing within this. If your mind can harmonize to the different dimensional layers, you've now existed through all the different dimensions. You have a much bigger thought form. So beings that exist in those less dense realms have much bigger spirals of creation. Beings that exist in the denser realms have much tighter spirals of creation. So it's by removal of delusion or removal of the ego that you can harmonize your awareness to the bigger and bigger spirals, right? That's how that works. And if you want to get so focused into a really, really tight spiral, that's how you create those tightest habitats. Yeah. I know that might be pretty far out there for many, but that's kind of like how this work relates to UAP and UFO is because quite literally, most UAP are like man-made, right? John Searle created Levity Disk in 1960s or 50s. Thomas Townsend Brown created electrogravitics in 1912, 1920s. We've had airships for the longest time imaginable. Probably almost pre-recorded history, we've had airships, right? Now imagine electrogravitics in combination with an airship. Imagine John Searle technology. We've had the ability to create these types of technologies for a very, very long time. So there's, you could say, man-made UAP, but then there's also the real UAP or phenomenon. Because again, to think that just because man has made technologies that are absolutely fantastic doesn't mean that there aren't things that exist beyond our understanding. Because we are, not to downplay what we are, I mean, we're great, we're human, but like we're a being perceiving this greatest form. And just like a worm perceiving the greatest form, a worm only has its limit, the worm has its limits of perception. The human body has much greater limits of perception, but we are still limited, is my point. And so there are true, you could say UFO or paranormal beings that exist in those outer and inner realms. And so that's why I don't really focus on the politics or the what someone else has done. I don't think that's necessarily that important. I don't really care about the different types of beings. I care about the understanding of that toroidal form, because I think that's all that really truly matters. And when you understand that there's the clusters that exist inner and the clusters that exist outer, You see that the reason why two people can look at the same UFO and see completely different things is because they're tuning into their own delusion. It's like staring at a mirror, but in a fractalized version, where you're seeing the densest part of your own creation. And to go along with that, I think that maybe a lot of abductions, not saying that they've never happened, but I'm saying that a lot of them might be like self-induced abduction, to where your awareness gets lined up properly to shoot into the less dense realm. It really is something to think about. But I'll be right back in about 1 minute. Give me a minute and a half. Thank you. All right. Hi, Chrissy. How's it going? If you have created these concepts for children to read at all. I have not created these concepts for children to read, but I have created a cartoon character. That's basically my skateboard animated into a cartoon. He's called Ollie the Skate Case. Actually, one of the songs that I played is animated in his cartoon. And in Ollie the Skate Case, which is a cartoon series, like a mini cartoon series, like maybe 5 or 6 episodes, we kind of promote these ideas, but to kids, right? In a very like cartoony and kiddie kind of way. Like the very, very first episode, basically a UFO crash lands on planet Earth. A gray alien walks out of it and like walks up to my skateboard and is like, I need parts, and they go over to Teddy B, they get parts, they fly in a rocket ship to another planet. So they're not really like going over this information, but I have designed stuff geared towards kids. And that basically, I did that when I was after school martial arts instructor. So I'd pick up kids from school, take them back, teach them Taekwondo, karate, and then also, speak a little philosophy and do some things with them. If you're a martial artist, you might enjoy this. So this is one thing I did with the students. Basically, if you have done Taekwondo before or karate or something of that nature, then you understand like focus position. It's like sitting cross-legged with your hands on your knees, back up straight, eyes focused forward. Point of attention, pinpoint focus. But there's also a thing called like katas and forms, where it's like a certain, set of moves like Chunji, Dosan, right? You have all your patterns. And so what I did with the students was I said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do our patterns right now. It's time for patterns. But instead of getting on your, instead of, what is it? It's been so long. Instead of standing up straight with your hands by your side, it was everybody quick focus position. Close your eyes. Now imagine that you're standing on your spot. Imagine you're in your point of attention, right? So all the kids are now sitting perfectly focused, but imagining that they're standing with their hands by their side. And then I said, ready, one. And they all imagined stepping out and doing a low block. They all imagined stepping and doing a punch. It's a really cool drill. And it really does help create that sense of visualization. Like why do you need to try something 30 times when you can just think about it in such a focused state to where you can feel your body performing every single motion, every single aspect of your body, to where you just do it one time, and the one time you do it, it's perfect, right? So by practicing visualization, you can flow more freely and have more focused motions, right? Because one concept that I speak about quite often is understanding the pacing motions of your life. So why ever miss? Why not just achieve, right? I know that was a rant, but I was trying to actually answer questions or comments in the audience here. So here we go. That was an attempt. I'm not sure what you mean by like a generalized Mach principle, honestly. Okay, so to speak on what Arisby and K42D are saying right now, I would say that all bodies are relative to the inertial reference frame. So to us, a human being existing within our dimensional layer, there's that astral plane. But within that astral plane, if you being a being, you might have a physical body, but it wouldn't be physical to an earth being, right? Yeah. But so what I was speaking on before I did that quick break and came back, was the idea of the different dimensional layers and existing within the different dimensional layers. So how could you ever actually prove that in a materialistic way, right? Like through science. How could you ever actually prove that scientifically? Honestly, it'd be the same way that Galileo proved that the Earth's not the center of the universe. You build a telescope. What I mean by that is, like, when Galileo had the telescope, he's looking out at the moons of Jupiter. He says, hey, well, actually, I don't know if Galileo built the telescope. He used the telescope and he looked at the moons of Jupiter, said, hey, the moons of Jupiter orbit that center. And so in that little section of space, the moons are orbiting Jupiter. The Earth's not the center of that system. Jupiter's the center of that system. Then you get like Tycho Brahe and Kepler and Copernicus, and they all look at the sun and the Earth, and they say, hey, well, it looks like the Earth is spinning while orbiting the sun. Heliocentric sun theory. They used a telescope, is my point. And so what will it really ever take to look and to understand that these different dimensions and the beings that exist in these different dimensions, it would take an interdimensional telescope. And what I mean by that is that if we understand we live within this fifth dimensional toroidal form of infinity, and we understand that our now moment is a stretching and crunching of a relative inertial reference frame, right, with synchronized energies spiraling inward, then we can essentially use the opposite of that to harmonize our alpha and beta state, because it's all those radio channels, right? There really isn't a physical. Physicality is manifested within the mind. The perception of physicality is a manifested experience. I don't see the same world that everyone else does when it comes to the physical universe. Your green might be different than my green. The way you hear a sound might be different than the way I hear a sound. It's pure vibration being perceived by a body and then being projected as the physical universe. And our best science is an overlapping of all of that. But the point that I'm getting at is that, so you create an interdimensional telescope to look through the different dimensional layers. We currently experience a physical reality when we're in our alpha and beta states. Those are shells of information. Not only is there a beta state, but a shell, there's a gamma shell, there's a fast gamma shell, there's the Aliverse shell, the Demiverse, the Stellaverse, the Petroverse, the Microverse, all those denser realms of creation, which I like to call the Noviverse. and all those less dense realms of creation, which I like to call the lower verse. All of those different shells of information exist simultaneously, creating that greater now. And so by understanding the orbital rate relationship to the diameter size, and understanding that like light follows the right hand rule, right? When it comes to magnetism, you can essentially create like tunnels that are surrounded by electromagnetic coils that will act as an interdimensional telescope, because they're going to slow down the light and spin it in a certain direction, or speed up the light and spin it in a certain direction. And that will allow your beta state to harmonize to a slower fast gamma state. So I think that's kind of cool. That's the idea of the interdimensional telescope. So in my opinion, this work does speak quite a bit about UAP, like true UAP, also the science behind the technologies. Yeah, but it's more about like understanding that currently right now we're drifting into this denser vibration. And that's not just the body going through its circadian rhythm, it's also our entire dimensional layer drifting around, you could say, the greatest center, the dark sun, if you were to think about like Masonic traditions. It's what our sun orbits, right? It's what our entire galaxy orbits. It's what our entire dimensional layer orbits. It's the center point of all creation, is that dark star. And so as all orbits have a perihelion and an aphelion, meaning a closest point to the center and a furthest point to the center, as that point of attention that is our awareness is drifting inward towards center, the crunching and stretching of the now moment become more and more dramatic. Meaning, as we drift towards center within our physical dimension, it would look like it's expanding. As we drift away from this greatest center, the universe would look like it's compressing. It's a breathing in and out of relative perceptions as our entire dimensional layer is in a state of orbit around this greatest center. That's how you get the universe breathing, but also conscious awareness shifting through different dimensional layers and the yugas of the precessional cycle. Because now we need to circle it back to sources of creation, evolution, and the imprints it's left on all bodies, right? So when it comes to like the evolution of the human being, not only did we get the ability of sound, touch, taste, and smell from the planet Earth, not only did we get the sense of vision from the sun, but we got something called a circadian rhythm, which goes from a delta state to a theta, to an alpha, to a beta, to an alpha, back to a beta, to an alpha, theta, and delta. So if this is your center point, as you go delta, theta, alpha, beta, alpha, beta, alpha, theta, delta, you drift in, you circle around, you drift out. The only thing that has that type of orbit within our perception of the universe is our gyroscopes hanging on a string at a 90-degree angle. And what that shows is that our physical bodies are the synchronization of energy that is streaming in from above. Our delta energy gets synchronized with the theta, with the alpha, the beta. The synchronized energies that create the body create this gyroscopic effect as we go through a circadian rhythm. That same effect also relates to the precessional system of the Earth. So as the Earth goes, I'm just going to use the yugas because they're the ones that make the most sense to me. You've got Kali Yuga, which you could say is our delta. You've got Dwapara Yuga, Tetra, Sat. Then they just go back out. They're kind of lame, honestly. They just go back to Tetra, Dwapara, Kali. But they probably should go Kali, Dwapara, Tetra, Sat, Tetra, Sat, Tetra, Dwapara, Kali. Because there's this in and out motion, right? As we go, as the Earth itself has a precessional system. And right now on this cycle, we're in that transition. Like if you're to compare yourself to the universe, you are in the universe. Our entire dimensional layer is going from that theta dream state into an alpha awake state. That's the same transition in the yugas, as said by Sadhguru, as going from Dwapara inward into Tetra inward. In the ages of the zodiac, it's going from the Pisces into the Aquarius. In the law of one energy ray systems, it's going from a yellow ray into a green ray. All of that says the same thing. It says you're going from a certain information matrix, which is bigger, into one that's more dense. So the human body, the human awareness, all our entire dimensional layer is essentially shifting into a denser vibration right now, showing that we're drifting inward. Science would say, well, yeah, the universe is expanding. Well, yeah, the universe looks like it's expanding when the dimensional layer is in a point of time that's drifting inward. When you drift outward, the universe might look like it's compressing. That is literally a 25,000 year science experiment that needs to be done. But the point that I'm getting at is that I'm actually debating right now in my head. Should I play this song or should I play another song? I'll do one more song and talk about one more concept tonight. This one is called Classical Lucius, and it's a 7-minute long original composition on the piano that I first heard in my dreams. And what was really cool is that, you know, I didn't just hear it in my dreams. It was a very lucid dream, and I'm sitting there and I'm playing Classical Lucius, and I'm like, whoa, it's at the Smithsonian. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, I had no idea what that even meant, because that's very generic and very general. But, you know, they have like lots of museums. But 7 years later, I got invited out to the National Mall, Washington, D.C. to play at the Ripley Center in an event called Brainstorm. I'm not sure if it was Brainstorm's Big Ideas in the Creative Future or if that was the second one, but it was a 5-year long thing to commemorate the reopening of the Arts and Industries building, something of like that nature. Either way, they invited me out to give a lecture on innovation, creativity at the Ripley Center. So I believe it was 2014. I got invited out to play, or not to play, to give a lecture on creativity. I ended up giving a 13-minute lecture called Innovate Your Dreams, meaning create your dreams. I concluded that with a poem, and then I played this 7-minute composition on their grand piano, which just so happened to be in the room where there were lectures being given. They don't have grand pianos in every room there. Like, there was a grand piano in that room. So I played it on that. And that was kind of cool, right? Because I saw it in my dreams 7 years earlier. That's where I learned the song. That's why I started playing it. And I go into that in the book called Mind, the Shifter and Reorganizer of Nodes, where I talk about lucid dreaming. I don't need it. I was going to read a section from it, but I don't need that. Basically, the closer and closer you get to center, meaning the more and more delusions you can remove, or the more you can like let go of your ego, right? Because ego is somewhat like a compounding of delusions through a lifetime. So the more and more you can like take the shells off the onion that create you and just be like one with the nature, the more you will be lucid in your dreams. So the more lucid you become in your dreams, the more effect you have on the pebbles that are being thrown into creation. That's why people that exist in those tightest spirals of creation don't really have a big impact on society. It's the ones existing in those longest waveforms that have the biggest impact. Everything moves around the big stuff, right? The longest waves of creation, all the other ones are somewhat moving within. I guess I'll read one poem real quick and then play the piano. This was the poem I concluded that lecture with. Because like I was young. I was like 26, 27, you know. I'm literally one person LLC. And next to me is NASA, and on the other side is like Qualcomm. And they all have teams that set up their booths. They have teams that promote the booths. They have a group of people that do their lectures for them. I did all of that, right? One person company. Which was kind of cool, kind of random. So I gave a lecture called Innovate Your Dreams, and it spoke on basically following your dreams. Humans are naturally innovative. Fear is what holds us back, right? Be creative. Anything is possible. This is called Simply a Man. I stand here today, simply a man, humbled and happy to be part of this plan. I was asked, what's innovation to me? You want me to inspire global creativity? Sure thing, no problem. That's a simple task. No D too difficult. It's clear as glass. People are already creative, and people have already achieved. Everything ever done is truly great indeed. We all have the power, and we all have the strength. We all have the heart inside to create a future that's safe. People are born with it, and it's as natural as can be. But mass media and broadcast may intimidate thee. Do I look cute? Am I too fat? Will she like it if I do that? Be fearless, I say. Who cares what they think? They want to make money just off the weak. But what if it doesn't work? And what if it doesn't go my way? What if they say and no one wants to play? Again, no worries. Change is a blessing. Learn to let go. It's a valuable lesson. Live today and tomorrow, and don't be blinded by a future that may or may not be sorrow. Instead, grab hold and seize the day. Be happy and bold and ready to play. So there you go. I think one reason why I like John Searle, other than the fact that he allegedly created flying saucers that could go to the moon and back in like 20 hours, go to the moon in 10 hours. It's not bad. He had his own company that built flying tech, literally flying. Look up John Searle, the John Searle story. Not the PhD like philosopher, but the John Searle levity disk inventor. Maybe I'll post that in the comments like afterwards. Yeah, I forgot why I was even talking about. Okay, the reason why I like him is because he also says that his main thought, like one of his main, you could say, personal philosophies, is that there is nothing that is impossible except for that your mind makes it so. Like the only reason why something might seem impossible to you is because your mind is making it impossible. Your thought process is making that action impossible. And so, I mean, yeah, you got to think about the collapsing of waveforms starting from the collective subconscious, creating one fluid experience for all of time to experience. Think about the ability to connect to the different layers, to have your thought forms project inward. Quite literally, the only thing making an action impossible is the state of your mind telling you so. That's a John Searle quote. I normally don't quote other people, but I really like that one, so I'm gonna do it. Sorry. Yep. That might be pretty much it for tonight. I'll do one more for fun, just to finish it off, but yep. This next, I mean, if you're still here, you've been watching, and I don't like to ask, hit that like, hit the share button or whatever. I don't know. I'm bad at that stuff. But no, just one more song for fun. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, what is disclosure to you? What are you really looking for when it comes to like your understanding of reality or creation? You want to know what the government's doing? Do you want to know the workings of it? Like, what ultimately you still have a life to live, and the life that you live, starts from your subconscious mind, So I think that's important to understand, and that your paths of least resistance have a lot to do with the postures you're holding in your subconscious. So maybe start to understand the pacing motions of your life, how this whole new wave of information coming out might be creating a lot of pacing within people. And that you are the direct connection to the universe. It's not you what the government tells you and then your understanding of reality. You, me, for me, you for you, are the direct connection to the universe. It's not you, government, universe, not you, religion, universe, you, scientific view, the universe. You are the direct connection to the greatest source of creation. Every single one of us is. We are all directly connected. And when that, so let's just say like that person becomes directly connected. That's cool. They're living within their own spiral. Let's just say this next person does. Okay, now those two people can actually probably communicate with one another. You can communicate with people that are in the same size spiral as you. So if the only way for all of humanity to ever truly communicate and work as one being is if we're all connected to that bigger spiral. It's just something to think about. And the difference between, you could say, malevolent versus benevolent beings within this toroidal form have to do with the size of the spiral their mind inhabits. So yes, we all do have free will and choice, but at a certain point, the choices become so obvious through the experiences that we've had that you're literally going just in the, like, there's no way you would even make that choice because it's so obvious, like you do this in this situation. So eventually through like the lessons learned, the pacing motions, we all start to somewhat harmonize to that greater structure. And that's, you could say, the lifting of a seed crystal. I go into crystallization of human consciousness over that. So you have that 25,920 year processional system, right? And over time, basically, the human consciousness will crystallize as it goes into a denser form. It will uncrystallize, right? So you have the less dense thought forms of humanity. You have the denser thought forms of humanity. But in order for beings of those densest energies to continue to exist, ones beyond our dimension, the human body and the species needs to harmonize. There's a lot more to that. I don't think I have time for that tonight. That'll be like a next time thing. We'll talk about, well, I'll read a quick section of the book, The Physics of Love. Let's see. Because this talks about the clusters of conscious creation, the recrystallization of clusters of conscious creation through processional systems so that denser beings can thrive and exist, right? Like our collective human consciousness is creating the habitats for the denser realms. I think that's the thing that's missing right now. And I think that's something you should probably come to understand on your own. And I don't think that will ever be disclosed. Fluid perceptions. Remember we were talking about the mind, body, and spirit diagrams earlier, the pebbles being tossed into the ocean and all the different dimensional layers. As we are a spiral of energy within this fifth dimensional toroidal form, our physicality is a point of perception, perceiving the less dense and more dense realms, crunching and stretching matter and light into existence. So you're quite literally a spiral of energy through a fifth dimensional toroidal form. That's how all incarnations overlap and exist from a scientific and physics point of view. Fluid perceptions. When you consider a molten, meaning if you crystallize and you hold your postures, you're like a crystal that's just like a rock tumbling in the fluid. So you can either be like a rock within your postures, or you can be like a fluid within your postures. If you're trying to align, or if you are aligning, your mind, body, and spirit through the different dimensional layers, you're more like a fluid. If you're really trying to focus on the physicality, you become very crystallized like a stone. So when you consider a molten, meaning fluid, mind, body, and spirit diagram versus one that has taken postures and solidified, you see that much friction may exist. All beings rise in conscious density as our experience drifts inwards, and so a liquefaction is somewhat necessary in order for higher density to continue to exist. Current state of society. Over the last few years, potentially starting on December 21st, 2012, we have seen a liquefaction of perceptions. It may have first started with an economic crisis. Soon after that, power struggles between political parties rose, and through the use of media, more and more separation has occurred. The next dissolver of delusions may be considered the COVID-19 outbreak. This began towards the end of 2019. This forced every single person on the planet to completely change their lifestyles. Subconsciously, we have all been challenged, to say the least. People were told that they were not essential by media. They were told to follow the social norm of the leading manipulators' point of view. People went from feeling that they had value to being called non-essential. People have also been locked into their homes and somewhat separated. Consider the advent of digital communications and the switching of actions being done in person to actions being done online. We see that physical connectivity has diminished. We have also seen rises in movements of equality. When considering all of the above societal actions, we see that a liquefaction of delusions has been occurring. The most recent release being that of the world governments admitting that to the human population that UAP do exist. A quick side. The fact that world governments need to tell people what to think to begin with shows the delusional state of our earthly population has been existing within. Every day for years, people tell their neighbors of accounts of UAP and etc. Yet the neighbors fail to believe because the mainstream thinking, which has been propagated through media and social shaming, says they don't exist. It is important that people become in tune with the greatest flow of reality so that they may remove themselves from the delusions of others. The connection is direct. It is you to the universe, not you, government, then universe. Therefore, you may now understand how the collective mind, body, and spirit state of the human population has become silicone into the molten silicone, and you lift it up. And all of the molten silicone turns into a perfect cylinder of crystalline structure. And that's what they slice and create computer chips out of. Let's now relate a seed crystal being dipped into a liquid batch of silicone to a golden chain of reincarnated beings being dipped into a batch of molten mind, body, and spirit distortions. As the seed crystal within the silicone is pulled up, the rest of the liquid batch sticks and rises with it. As the golden chain is lowered into the batch of molten distortions, you see a crystallization of distortions takes place. This may be considered a converging moment within our 5D multiverse of potentiality. All potential timelines will converge. Diverging and converging timelines in relationship to 2012 and 2029. Speculation. There are many bodies, referring to universes, orbiting with the raw energy of experience. Each body has a push and pull on the ones next to it when looking from a six-dimensional view. You could say it would be very similar to how planets within our solar system push and pull on each other as one passes. For example, as Jupiter passes the Earth in its closest orbit, it tugs on the planet, and then the Earth drifts slightly outwards away from the Sun. As Jupiter passes, the Earth paces back to its new orbital and finds its new zero. There is a dimensional alignment, somewhat of a syzygy effect, of the four closest habitable zones every 2,029 years. The next great cycle is related to 8.1 million years. This shows that as the alignment approaches, that our experience of the universe will be pulled out of its typical laminar flow. It will literally orbit in a slightly less dense realm of experience. This tugging on our experience would translate into a turbulent flow, as our experience paces back to the typical orbit within the fluid of time. It could almost be like a rock splashing water, causing a divergent moment of timelines in relationship to the fluid of time. Then, the water that has splashed up in the bucket eventually settles and once again fills a certain shape and makes a certain space. The resettling of the fluid of time would be symbolic of all converge. The resettling of the fluid of time would be symbolic of the converging of all splashed timelines. Our experience will once again orbit in its typical flow. Relating this to our manifested experiences, you could say the moment of December 21st, 2012 would be considered the moment our universe was tugged outward. It has fallen back into the laminar flow as of March 21st, 2021. On June 21st, 2029, also potentially December 21st, 2029, our experience of the universe will have drifted to maximum inwardness. Considering the concept of jumping shells within habitable zones of experience, this would be a day to remember. So now we're talking about the precession of energy, existing within a tidally locked vortex of infinity. We've talked about how beings exist at all different dimensional layers, the different information matrices. So as our entire dimensional layer is drifting inward, there's many cycles. There's the cycle for our day, the year, the precessional system. Like there's so many different in-out motions that overlap to create our dimensional experience. People that are following this topic are probably pretty aware of the idea of like many people saying like 2025 or 2027. The number that has come to me is actually 2029. It's June 21st, 2029 or December 21st, 2029, being a great moment for jumping shells within habitable zones of experience, meaning that that's going to be a day when the energies properly align for denser beings to jump into a less dense realm. Take it as you want it. I mean, like our dimensional layer can jump into a less dense realm. Denser realms could jump into our realm. I'm pretty sure all energies will shift, is the point. And what does that mean, though, is ultimately that like there might be an overlapping between dimensional layers to the point where a denser realm actually becomes perceivable to our dimension within space-time. Right? So the veil will be lifted in that sense. Because if you can physically just perceive another dimension because that synchronized energy aligns, then that would be like the veil being lifted, right? So that potentially could be coming up. And it's just kind of wild that all this work ends up going there. And that during the writing of the book, The Physics of Love, Synchronicity, which was written 12/22/21, which is 122/221, right? That's the magic squares fractalizing inward and also getting bigger as far as the date in relationship to magic squares. Also the date that the newest Matrix was released, which is kind of funny. I think that's like a wink, wink. Because, okay, the second I finished writing this book too, though, I heard in my head, go outside, look up, you'll see the craft. Literally, I was kind of annoyed because I wrote The Crystal of Time on 2/21/2021. And I heard in my head when I finished, so that's 2/21/221/221, 12/21/2021. That's The Crystal of Time, which was the third book. Sixth book was 12/22/21 kind of thing. And but when I finished The Crystal of Time, I heard in my head, go outside, look up, you'll see our craft. Literally, I was like, all right, whatever. Go outside, look up. And I didn't see a craft. I saw the biggest shooting star I'd ever seen, but like instantly. The second I walked up, looked up, big shooting star. So that was kind of cool. You know, that's a good synchronicity. When I finished the sixth book called Synchronicity, The Physics of Love, I hear in my head again, go outside, look up, you'll see our craft. I was just like, yeah, maybe I'm just making stuff up. You want me to believe anything is going on right now, you got to show me 2 shooting stars. So I walk outside, look up, and it's just 1, 2 shooting stars. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Here you go. I will I will publish this, I guess, apparently, and make it a book. So that's that. That's like this whole thing. And, you know, for me, it's all started when I was like 5 years old, like learning in my dreams, trying to remain as dumb as possible while being able to communicate to society, right? Um, yeah, no. So for me, like, it's just kind of funny how this whole thing works. But what I want to do now is close out on a fun song. And this one, I don't know if it really has a name. This song is unnamed, but it's Boogie Woogie, and it's a lot of fun. Sorry. Can you believe that? All right. Well, if you want to hear Boogie, I think it's called Boogie all Night. If you want to hear Boogie All Night, you're going to have to wait 35 seconds. I'm just throwing out a random number, but 35 seconds starting now. What's fun about this song was that I I started playing it when all these songs are originals. I started playing this song when I lived in Boulder, Colorado, and I was studying for astrophysics. I got my bachelor's in astrophysics, like physics, astrophysics, astronomy, planetary sciences, bachelor's, right? Minor in geology, then at USF, master's in mechanical engineering. Before I graduated, I started my own company based off of inventions built in my dreams. Invited to the Smithsonian a year after I graduated, right? Giving lectures on innovation, education across the country at libraries, middle schools, universities, museums, several years. But what the point that I'm getting at is that this song, it's kind of old, but it's a lot of fun. All right, I do read the comments every now and then. So what do we got? All right, hi Shelly. Yeah, what's up? Chrissy, thank you for being here. Chrissy has a really cool drawing of two vortices coming together, and that is kind of the point of all the work, is that you're somewhat of a point of attention, but your body is also a toroidal form. Angelique, good to see you here. Very cool, actually. We should, I'm gonna send you an email. I'm just messing. But basically, yeah, no, I mean, I got one more song to play. And the idea behind this one is that our body is a relative vibration within the toroidal form of infinity. So we have a relative perception of time. And that relative perception of time is what is typical for your average human body that's existing within alpha or beta brain state harmony. So how can you train your body to perceive different frame rates of time? For example, the average human conscious snapshot is like 60 frames a second. 60 times in a second, right? So that'd be like really fast. What I really like doing is slowing down space-time, right? So what I mean by that is the perceiving of space-time. And one way to do that is by practicing Tai Chi. And I know this, it probably makes perfect sense, basically. So regular karate, regular martial arts, I'm standing here, I'm in my fighting stance, I throw a punch. That punch, even the slow motion punch I just threw, it probably took like a second. If you were to throw a punch as fast as you could, maybe a split second. But now so how many times does your brain take a picture of that motion through your body? How many conscious snapshots is my brain taking as I just do like a quick punch, right? Maybe like, if you take 60 conscious snapshots a second, your punch is less than a second. You're taking 30 conscious snapshots per the motion. So what is your muscle memory? What is the development? What does your subconscious start to interact with? When you do Tai Chi or things of that nature like yoga, you move very slowly. You don't move at all. But the same motion, that same punch could take, I need to tighten my fist a little bit, right? I need to torque my wrist a little bit differently. I need to make contact. Let's tighten this one up, bring that shoulder up, right? That same punch, you can learn so much information just by doing a punch at the slowest motion imaginable. Your brain has now taken 1,000, 2,000, however slow you go, it's taken many more conscious snapshots versus like a quick punch. Yeah, I know how to punch. Do you really know how to punch? What if you punch like, will your body learn to punch? Will you learn to feel your where your hip is at a certain point? Like I just checked all my knuckles, right? Checked my shoulders, checked my elbow in line with my wrist, right? Feeling the tensions in every single point. How aware are you of your motion as you move through space-time? Those are extremely, that's why I say understand the pacing motions of your life. And those pacing motions even exist between motions, right? Like I'm just grabbing a cup. Well, did you grab the cup like this? Did you grab the cup like that? Did you do some weird thing to grab the cup? Like laminarizing the energy is ultimately like the conservation of universal energy. That's something my brother and I used to talk about all the time. It's like, well, based off universal energy, like when we were growing up, we were kids. We were like 10, 12 years old. We would just talk to each other this way. Well, based off universal energy, it's easier for you to grab that than for me. Okay, so can you pass me that? And you pass me that. Like, cool. Can you do that? Yes. Can I do this? Sure, no problem. It's based off universal energy. It's not based off of like the ego. It's not based off of what you're entitled to. It's based off of like what you're supposed to do based, from the energies that are creating the now moment. So you get really in tune with universal energies is the point that I'm getting at. You get in tune with less dense realms. You get in tune with your body. Tai Chi is very good in many ways. Could help a lot of people. Obviously, I have no script, and I'm just rambling. So I'm going to play one song that's very Tai Chi related, and I call this Boogie All Night. So I'm going to play it regular, but then I'm going to play like the intro and all that kind of stuff at Tai Chi speed, and then I'm going to play it regular again. And you'll notice that when I play it regular again for the second time, you'll pick up on so much more that happened when I play it fast the third time, right? Like kind of thing. And it reminds me, this is a little bit different, but it reminds me of a one time when I used to teach Taekwondo, all that stuff. I used to also teach soccer. I was the captain of my soccer team, and all from when I was like 5. Ended up becoming the captain of like a club team, I guess. And then also like the coach for my nephew and stuff when I was older. But the point that I'm getting at right now is that during a soccer practice when I was about 27 or 28, and I was, it was La Liga Mexicana in Florida, and we had Sensi was our team. I was the captain of it, and we did soccer practice, right? So being like a club sport team and not necessarily having a coach, but just having a squad that's played together for such a long time, people would host practices. So I was in charge of the practice that day. And what I made us do was I said, hey, everybody, let's get in a circle. So the whole team got in a circle. And I said, close your eyes. So the whole team closed their eyes. And we had a ball. And I said, we're just going to listen. We're going to play by sound right now. We're going to pass by sound. Basically, the person with the ball calls out someone's name. That person needs to say, hey. The other guy needs to say, yo. Right then, you've created an auditory connection between the two different individuals. You pass the ball. You hear the ball rolling through the grass, and you receive it. Then that person goes, hey. Another person goes, yo. And they pass the ball. That person receives it. No sight at all, only sound. And this was only a 1 hour event. The next game, that we played, every single person basically came up to me and said, I could hear the ball rolling through the grass. And that was crazy. Just by doing that 1 hour exercise, people could hear the ball rolling through the grass as it went to their ankles. So not only do you have this visual of the ball coming, now you can actually hear the ball rolling to you. It's just awakening another sense that's normally like bypassed so easily. And so this is somewhat the awakening of another sense, right? Like a sense of time, to be able to understand the more information that exists. That comes down to the conscious snapshots you take per motion in relationship to total forms. So like if you're a human on Earth and you're walking, you take a certain amount of conscious snapshots of the Earth. Jump in a car. How many conscious snapshots do you take in that same length of mile? Jump in an airplane. How many conscious snapshots? At what point does your harmony within the incoming energies that create your body disconnect from that natural flow? At what point do you suffer jet lag, in other terms? It's something to really think about when it comes to like being able to connect consciously through the different dimensional layers. I think jet lag is actually a really big hint about the circadian rhythm not being attuned to the Earth's toroidal form, right? Which is tuned to the sun's toroidal form, which is tuned to the galactic center's toroidal form. So at what point do you become disconnected? At what speed does a human become disconnected from the laminar flow? That might be like an out there topic, but I think many people will understand that. And so this song is called Boogie All Night. Time we hit the road, said I'm gonna take you down the funky town tonight. Maybe to those bars, over to the moon and past those stars. I know we will find a way, oh let's go play. Hi. Sorry about that. Tai Chi. I really do appreciate that, Angelique. But we're all subject to the financial system we live in, right? So we can only be as free as so possible. But I do try. Right on. Well, I'm glad everyone enjoyed tonight. I think it's time for me to close out. I have to be up at 6 in the morning. So I mean, I feel as if I live freely, but at the same time, I need to be up at 6 in the morning so I can shower, go to work, be there by 7, kind of thing. You know. So thank you for joining. And let's see what we got here. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, this is Infinity. You know, I'd like to increase the production. We'll get it going. I do open mic nights currently at this time. People are always like, yeah, come to our next open mic night. I'm like, okay, cool. So I do that. You know, maybe this whole show of piano and poetry can get a little further one day. I do have a few of the songs animated. I've got the Big Bang Multiverse animated. I have the song called I Love You also animated. So, you know, we'll just see where it goes. And thanks for joining. Have a great night. I'll see you guys next time.